First, thank you to Chris and the team for the welcome back here, and thank you all for taking Thursday off, because I know that this is disruptive to the work week for the collective group here. I want to start by telling you that I have attended, by my count, 15 of the last 18 Perform Better Providences. And so I started a business in 2007 with Eric Cressy, as Chris mentioned. And by recollection, if you ask Eric, he'll tell you that the first 6 years that we came here together, I'd come with him as he was about to give a lecture. All 6 of them, I approached Mike Boyle and he introduced himself to me for the first time. Okay? And Eric thinks this is the funniest thing in the world. So I naturally got my text from Eric last night saying, I look forward to you meeting Mike tomorrow, yada, yada, yada. I delivered this lecture at Mike Boyle's winter seminar this year, so we've got over that hump. But today, as I was packing up the backpack to get in the car and head down here, my wife walks up to me and she goes, hey, good luck today. When you meet Mike Boyle, I want you to make sure you shake his hand firm and you look him in the eye. I've never told her that story, so one of my colleagues is absolutely fucking with me. So anyway, this is I think my 15th visit here, and the first time I get to lecture at this event, but I love this event. It was mentioned earlier that there's jump in and out of rooms. What you're gonna see is some full rooms, some empty rooms. Please go to the front of the empty room and sit down and engage with the lecturer, because I have been the person in the room who had the small crowd, and those are often the best ones because you get to have a conversational experience with the presenter. So do that. Just do that once in the next 72 hours. I promise you won't regret it. Today I'm going to talk about behavioral science. So the actual presentation title here, Mastering Sales with Behavioral Science, Influence, Persuade, and Sell More. Before I do that, I'm going to tell you guys a little bit myself, a little bit more, we'll say. So in 2007, started Cressy Sports Performance with Eric and a guy named Tony Gentilcore, which some people in the room may not know. But Tony is a former colleague, still good friend, but he opened up his own shop a decade ago now. But he started with us. And since that time, I've been running the Massachusetts facility. And in 2014, we opened a Florida location as well. So Eric and his wife kind of run Florida, and me and John here, who you can see on the left, pretty much run Massachusetts. And they're up here, but we're more of like a vacation destination where they happen to have a really well-equipped gym, more than a place that they function out of. But the models are very similar. We cater to baseball players. That's what we're known for. It doesn't mean that's the only people who come through the door, but we have 85% of the people who come through are baseball players in our space. So we're very much locked into a specific niche. And I'm going to talk to you today about experiences related to serving that community, but I will tell you that everything I cover is going to be applicable to almost every aspect of your life. This is going to be convincing your spouse to go to the restaurant that you want to go to. This is going to be getting your kids to do the things you want. This is going to be selling your fitness business. This is going to be a lot of different things, but you're going to realize that this stuff is all around you all the time. So for me, I have 2 little boys, Colin and Owen. I might talk about them a little bit. I know you'll see Colin in one of the slides at least. I co-founded that business, and as Chris mentioned, I work with Business for Unicorns with Mark Fisher, who's in the back of the room. You should all watch Mark lecture, I think tomorrow. Are you tomorrow? Tomorrow, go see Mark. Before Mark leaves to go unpack at the hotel, I'll tell you that Mark has informed me that one of his guilty pleasures is spending his daughter's future college savings account. And so from 6:30 to 8 tonight, if anybody wants to come and talk shop with us, drinks are on Business for Unicorns, okay? So we are going to be across the street at the brewery. What is it, Union Station?
Union Station Brewery.
So go 6:30. I have the... You good? All right. I'll have a slide at the end reminding you of that, but I'd love to see anyone who's interested. We're going to be there to talk shop and buy you all a beverage if you want in. I've been with Business for Unicorns since the spring of 2021. I'm a coach to gym owners with them. Last time I checked, we're pushing around 150 gym owners that we're working with. Is that accurate? Yeah, right in that range, including one in the room. I want to give a shout out to Priya. Priya flew here from India in the last 48 hours. Okay, so this is an event worth traveling for. Priya is probably going to fall asleep while I talk, and I understand why. So for that reason, if there are other people in the room who feel that way, I want to give you some early value. So if you want to use this QR code, we got 3 cool things in there for you from Business Unicorns. The first is the one-on-one meeting template that I'm sure Mark had a heavy hand in developing. The second is Mark's goal setting template. And the third is a 3-page PDF of this presentation. Okay? Definitely grab that and look at it at another time. Don't have it open in front of you right now. It's not useful. It's going to just look like a beefy mess of listed concepts. But definitely grab it. I'll come back to this at the end as well if anyone needs to get to it. So, quick story. This past December, I had a 4-day weekend away. And before I left on a Thursday morning, we had a nutrition consultation scheduled in our gym. And we don't do a particularly good job with these as far as I'm concerned. We're not registered dietitians. We can't write diets outside our scope of practice. So basically all we can do is sit down and talk about habits and talk about kind of making better decisions with our youth athletes. And it can be good, but it's pretty elementary, and it's not something I care to sell that much of because I feel like you can only do so much with a precision nutrition certification and a staff member who's not that fired up about it. But we had one booked, and it was a really busy time of year. And we just, the offices were full, we had assessments going on, I didn't have a place to put them. And so I put the nutrition consultation basically on folding chairs in our staff lounge. And I slapped a sheet of paper on the door that said, "Do not disturb, nutrition consult in progress." I mean, I hand wrote it with an ugly marker. I taped it with, I remember I used duct tape because I couldn't find proper tape. And I just slapped it on the door and I walked away. I came back on Tuesday and it was still on the door. And I was like, guys, this looks like shit. How is this still up? And my office manager looks at me and he goes, "We did 7 nutrition consultations yesterday. I think I sold 7 in the last 6 months. We did 7 in 1 day." And that stupid, ugly sign sat up for 2 days. And athletes kept coming to the front desk after it had been up for about 24 hours. And they were like, "Hey, I got to book a nutrition consult." And we were like, "Why? We don't even have a price for it on the website." And what they'll tell you is that they did it because they know it'll amplify their training results. But the reality is they did it because of FOMO, fear of missing out, which is actually a behavioral science concept, and something that you might call the mere exposure effect, which is we favor things that are recently in our mind. We see enough of it, we think we need it. And just having a stupid, ugly handwritten sign up sold a couple $100 worth of nutrition consultations for us. And in that moment, I was actually brainstorming what I was going to present about at our spring seminar or our retreat for Business Unicorns. And I said, I think this is it. I've read a little bit about behavioral science. I'm interested in these concepts. I'm going to dig a little deeper. And that was the emphasis for me kind of getting into this and taking a look at it. So what is behavioral science? Well, quite simply, it's the study of how people really make decisions. But this goes back far. Like, I'm talking as far as Freud, 1800s. But for the sake of today's material that I'm going to cover, I'm going to lean into concepts from Thaler, Sunstein, Dan Ariely, Danny Kahneman, Robert Cialdini. These are kind of my biggest influences in this capacity and where I've consumed the most information since the moment that I decided I was going to design this presentation. Some of it was coming back to material, but a lot of it was new to me as well. And once you start looking, you're going to realize this stuff is everywhere. It's in how these rooms are set up. It's in how you walk through this space and suddenly you feel compelled to buy some perform better equipment. It's all behavioral science. These are all nudges, okay? What am I going to do? I'm going to try and help you turn these principles into tools that we can use to influence people, persuade, and this is the most important part here, sell our stuff ethically. So there's an interesting piece of this book right here, Influence. Robert Cialdini wrote this in the early 80s. Mark gave this book to me years back, and he said, I think you should read this book. This book's awesome. And I think of Cialdini as kind of the godfather of persuasion techniques, and what he said in the opener of his book is that, or in his most recent revised copy, which was released in the last 5 years, and you should pick up that one, not the 1981. He said, I designed this book because I wanted to help people get around the tricks of the trade with used car salesmen and snake oil salesmen and people who were taking advantage of them. And he said, my biggest regret is that all I did was teach them how to be better at it. but we can use it for good intent, for the best interest of the client. You might find as I present, whenever I talk about clients at CSP, I call them athletes. And that's just a habit. I call everybody an athlete. My wife's an athlete who comes into our strength camps. Tony, the 76-year-old who comes in to train 2 days a week, he's an athlete when I talk about it. So when I say that, please understand that it's kind of an all-encompassing term for me when I talk about the people who come through our doors. So these are the 6 primary pillars of influence from Cialdini. First is reciprocity. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. The second is commitment and consistency. That might be the person who goes onto Facebook and declares, this is the year I go to perform better, I'll see you there. They're gonna show up because they made that public statement. Third is social proof. You walk into my facility, you're gonna see framed jerseys hanging all over the place. They're selling the concept. Fourth would be authority. Maybe you're in a position of authority, standing at the front of the room, coaching your athletes. We know how that influence works. Next would be liking. We like to surround ourselves with other people that we enjoy. And the sixth would be scarcity. So these 6 were the original 6 from the 1981. In the new edition, he added a recent one, which is unity. And we see that one every damn day with the obnoxiousness of politics as it relates in our social media. Unity is a big piece of what we're doing today, and I would recommend that book for that reason. Here's a quote. I put this quote up here because I came across it not twice, but 3 times in the books that I read leading up to this. The essential difference between emotion and reason is that emotion leads to action, while reason leads to conclusions. Better put, I would say, people make decisions based on emotions, and then they justify them with logic. Okay? So our clients who needed a nutrition consult, they did it because they were worried that one of the other guys in the gym was going to get better results than them, so they're emotionally trying to keep up. Then logically they'll tell you, because this is going to make this year's program more effective. So here's how I'm going to attack this. These are going to be a collection of biases, heuristics, and fallacies. I'm going to hit you with kind of a waterfall of terms and concepts. By my count, there's 38 to 40 of them in here. They're all in the 3-page PDF I mentioned. They're all in the slides. The intention is not to memorize all of them. The intention is for you to take 1, 2, maybe 3 little quick tools away from this that you can employ on Monday morning in your operation. And I'm gonna tie all of these in with stories of how they worked in my operation. So we'll talk about how they affect pricing strategy in the first section. Second section, we're gonna talk about how you can modify your sales language using these. And then lastly, we're going to talk about how you can retain business and work on ascension, so get that business to spend more money with you using some of these concepts. So the first one, pricing hacks, backed by science. First concept I want to talk about is what I would call dollar distancing, but basically what we're trying to do is make money feel less real. Okay, so when we step into a casino, what do we gamble with? Chips. We're not putting dollars on the table. And that's for good reason. They want to separate you mentally from those dollars. It's the same reason why when we're given a gift card, we just go wild with it. It's like, I don't care. I got a $50 gift card to Starbucks. Whatever you want, go ahead. Doesn't feel real. The faster we can get people away from that mentally, the more we're going to sell. In your case, we could use charm pricing. Charm pricing is the difference here between a $29 transaction and a $30 transaction. So the first digit tends to get prioritized in the mind of the user. So a $2.99 transaction versus a $3 transaction, people might think back to 2, and you need to start thinking about that. With charm pricing, this small difference of $1 can dramatically impact the way that people think about the spend. Up to a 9% shift in perception of whether this is a good deal or not, just by changing it by $1. Remove the dollar signs. This menu here has no dollar signs, it just has numbers. There was a study in the Cornell Center for Hospitality where they found out that people increased their spend by 8% at the average meal when there were no dollar signs on the menu. 8%'s real money in our business. Next, frame the spend in time and sessions, not just money. And that's kind of a bridge to this next section, which is time frame shapes perception, okay? So what we want to do is we want to shrink the window. Shorter time frames, they feel like a better deal to people, okay? So quantifying your service in days or weeks or months is more effective than doing so in years. So compared to annual pricing, if you broke it down to daily, The average user is going to see it as 5 times more likely to be rated a great deal in their mind, okay? So for the sake of simplicity, if your service costs $365 this year, you're far better off telling people, hey, for $1 a day, you're going to like this. They're going to think that's a 5 times better deal than the exact same deal, which is $365 this year. You go to monthly, it's not a 5x multiple, but it is a 28% increase in perception of the quality of the deal. So let's get away from outlining specifically annual spends, okay? How can we use this in practice? Well, in my case, we charge $449 a month for unlimited training. So if I walk up to an athlete and I say, hey, you strike me as someone who wants to go all in on this. If you were to come in here 6 days a week like our professional athletes, you'd be walking through the door for under $15 a month. No brainer, right? That approach is going to shift the way they think about their spend. And we're going to get into something later in this presentation, which is called labeling, which I just did, and we'll understand a little bit further why and how that works. Let's talk about pricing strategy from the perspective of visuals, high to low anchoring. This is our pricing sheet. This deliberately does not match what I just said, which is we charge $449 a month for unlimited training. That's because I want to tell the room, if you haven't raised your prices in the last 12 to 18 months, that's what I want you to do first on Monday. If nothing else, you will all make more money this year because it's time, okay? Now, if you really want us to just streamline this for you, shoot me an email, Pete@Business for Unicorns, and I'll send you the Raise Your Rates playbook, which we use with Business for Unicorns, and I would ask you to plagiarize it. Steal the language, I don't care. But the point is, we have to be increasing our pricing all the time. If anyone in the room follows my social media or my business's social media, you'll see that we announced at noon today that we are relocating CSP. The Massachusetts location is moving a couple hundred yards down the road. Come out tonight for a drink and I'll tell you the story of how we just got this get out of jail free card on a shitty lease. And that'll be a story for another time. But in that lease that I just signed in the new space, there's a 3% annual increase on my spend. And it seems totally logical to me. But for some reason, us fitness professionals do not paint a picture of a mandated increase annually as consistently as we should. But everybody's life is getting 3% more expensive every year. We should be part of that. We shouldn't be absorbing that, okay? But up until about 6 months ago, we were $429 a month. We lead with premium prices here for a couple of reasons. The first is the primacy effect. The first number we see tends to stick. We see so much stuff every single day. This clicks in our head. We tend to go to where we started. And some of us are gonna be exhausted tonight. We're gonna get back to the hotel room. We're gonna flip on Netflix. We're gonna get there and we're gonna know that first one that they're trying to force feed us all the time. Like, new to Netflix, look at this thing. And you see it every time you open it up. And then you're gonna spend 20 minutes scrolling, and you're all gonna end up back at the same place that we did. We always get back to where we started because the primacy effect, it's sticky. Next, it creates mental ownership. I put the most expensive thing at the front of the list because it's the most comprehensive experience. An example, let's say in Business for Unicorns, we have a high tier offer called Leadership Society. It's really expensive. I'm not gonna hide from that. But with it, one of the perks is you're getting Mark's cell phone number, you're getting Michael Keeler's cell phone number, and they don't ignore people who are in Leadership Society. You got a problem, they're gonna answer all the time. You go one step down the list, you're not getting that phone number anymore. Mentally, when you've read it and you've processed that, you kind of start to take ownership of the checklist. And so when you do that, it feels like it got taken away from you when you move down a level. So the sooner you can get all of the best stuff into the mind of the person, the buyer, the consumer, the better. Okay, next. At the very least, it makes everything else after it feel like a good deal, okay? Let's talk about Hobson's choice. Hobson's choice is the failure to give a comparison point. So that's someone who calls you and they say, hey, how much does it cost to personal train with you? And you're like, it's $100 a session. Do you want it? That is giving them a do I want it or not single question. Give them options. If somebody asks for personal training, you say it's $100 a session. If that's too rich for your blood, we do semi-private training over here. We can make it happen for 40% of that. But the point is, we want to get away from do I want this or not, and we want to get to I want something, which one am I picking? Okay? Hobson's choice is only giving one. So if people ask for one, give them two. Every time. Always have a second thing to sell. Next, the magnetic middle. I came across the magnetic middle from Cialdini, actually, and the concept was that we need to have a safe choice for buyers because they see the extremes on our pricing, and they think, all right, one of them is low quality, one of them super high quality, and we tend to gravitate toward the middle, and in all honesty, you end up just to left of center. So if you have a $1,000 option and a $100 option, people are looking for something in that $400 to $500 range. This is why it's a great idea to add a crazy expensive service offering, okay? You don't necessarily have to have it on your pricing sheet, but if you want a personal train with Eric Cressy in our gym, it's gonna cost you $500, $600, $700, okay? And it's not because I expect to sell a lot of it, but having it to use for this purpose, it can pull the middle to a higher place. I learned the extremely expensive concept here from Thomas Plummer about a decade ago. And we put it in place and we've been using it since. It pulls everybody's spend up. The paradox of choice. There is an awesome podcast episode, if you find that you're interested in this behavioral science stuff, on Freakonomics Radio. It's an episode called Should Trader Joe's Run America? And they tell a story in this podcast where there's a grocery store. So let's say, imagine a Whole Foods. And they have a table with a selection of jelly. And they have 24 containers of jelly on the table for display. And so let's say 1,000 people walk by that table that day. With 24 units on the table, 60% of the people who walked by stopped. 600 bodies. 3% of those 600 people bought jelly. They changed the table. They downsized it to 6 containers of jelly. The number went down. Only 40% of people stopped, okay? They sold 6.5 times as much jelly to the 40% who stopped. Less options makes the buying process far less anxiety-inducing for people. So if you have a pricing sheet that is just banged out with 1,000 options, you're killing yourself. People are, one, mentally fatigued by the process, and two, they're just overwhelmed. And there is one competitor that we all deal with and we don't realize it, and it is indecision, okay? There are tons of people that we don't lose out to the competition. They choose nothing at all. There are a lot of people who reach out to me and say, hey, I want to know about your summer program. I'm thinking about taking summer baseball off. I want to come out. I'm looking at you and you and you. And we don't get their business, and I reach out 6 months later, and I say, hey, we're getting ready for next summer's program. Thought you might be interested. Out of curiosity, where'd you end up last year? More than half of them will tell me, I didn't do anything at all, I stayed home. And so understand that if we're giving more reasons for people to be overwhelmed and they're like, I've had enough, I gotta just step away from this, they're buying less. So too many options, indecision or dissatisfaction, and then we want to limit price points to keep these tiers of service much more manageable for people to process. Again, if you're looking for something on the ride home, Freakonomics Radio, Should Trader Joe's Run America? Really interesting podcast episode. Another one that you should definitely listen to is called How to Get Anyone to Do Anything. And it's Cialdini on Freakonomics Radio. And it was released when he rolled out this new and improved edition of his book. Very good listen. Let's talk about default settings. I told you my son Colin would show up in this. This is Colin a couple years back getting a pitching lesson in our facility. And here's an example of how we use default settings in action at my gym. So this would be choice architecture. So I know that our calendar tends to fill up, our skill development calendar, when we get into the middle of the winter. It gets hard to get into one of those after school slots because what happens is people grab them. They'll be like, I want every Monday at 3 o'clock. And I'll let them do that. If they want to lock in for a whole off season, they can. But parents get pissed when they choose not to sign up for the next one. They try and come back next week and it's full. And so I default people into the mindset, hey, you just started, you did Tuesday at 4. I went ahead and I tentatively reserved that for you moving forward. I want to give you right of first refusal on the space. If I don't hear back from you, I'm going to assume that you're in. But otherwise, just shoot me a message if you want me to pull that out of there. It's very rare that people email and say, no, thank you. Take me out, take me out, take me out. They'll say, yeah, I'll hold on to it. And maybe they didn't intend to come and they end up coming. But what we're trying to do is make the decision to come easier. So you need to build architecture into their choices. People assume that the default option is the expert's choice, okay? So some people will assume you're just trying to get them to spend as much as possible, but some people are gonna say, hey, I would imagine you optimize this and you're telling me this is how frequently we can come to get the best results, I'm in. An example of choice architecture exists here in, well, it exists everywhere, and that is organ donor status. So there are two different types of organ donor decision making. There are countries with what's called explicit intent, and there are countries with presumed intent. So in the United States, it is explicit intent. When you're filling out that information at the DMV, you check the box. Yes, I would like to be an organ donor. There are plenty of countries, Spain for example, where they have presumed intent. You have to check the box to opt out of being an organ donor. There aren't that many people who are offended by that. In Spain, 90% of the population are organ donors. Here in the United States, that is 60%. Until you need an organ, or you have a family member who's been in an accident and they need one, this doesn't feel like much to you, but that's a big deal. When 30% of the population higher is open to this concept, that's saving lives, that's choice architecture. So there are ways that we can just build better habits in. I told my son, I'm trying to explain this to him, because he sat and he listened to me give some of this presentation when I was preparing to give it a couple months back at Boyle's place. And he's like, I don't understand the organ donor thing. Give me another example. And I said, Colin, my biggest regret in my life, biggest regret, my first job out of school, before I discovered fitness, I worked in corporate. I worked in a cube at a publicly traded company. And I got there and I had an option to check the 401k match and max out all those benefits, and I didn't. Because I was like, nah, I want that extra 40 bucks next paycheck. Colin's not being given that choice. He is written out of the will if he doesn't check that box, because it's such a game changer, but that's choice architecture. I want presumed intent on employee matching. I want people to have to say no thank you, not to go there and check that box for myself. But this stuff makes a big difference. At CSP, we are toying with an idea of choice architecture in our new facility, where we no longer sell once a week training to people who live inside of a half an hour of us. If they live close enough to get here with some degree of ease, we tell them, you can't get a once a week format until you've done at least 1 month of twice a week. It's important. We need to teach you the basics, foundational movement patterns. We need to make sure you're competent in the weight room. You earn the right to get into that once a week format and start following off-site training material that we designed for you outside of our supervision. And I think I'm gonna get my business partner, John, across the finish line there. And I know that when we do so, we're gonna have dozens and dozens of teenage athletes who look at their dad like they're crazy when he says, yeah, we're pulling back to once a week in month 2. They're like, no, you're not. We should go up to 3 days a week. This place is my favorite place. That's choice architecture. In the best interest of the athlete as far as I'm concerned, because I do believe in the service, and I think it's a great idea for them to train with us and not partially offsite if they can avoid it. Let's talk about sales language. So we're gonna take, behavioral science and turn this into words that sell. Loss aversion is one that we encounter every single day. Mark's really good at this. He writes great email copy. He will make you feel like there is serious urgency to make moves on the offers that we have. And the reality is that people are twice as motivated to avoid losing something as they are to gain something new. That's from Danny Kahneman. So an example in my space, let me go forward here, expiring session reminders. For us, if you buy a pitching lesson from us today, it doesn't expire, but 365 days from now, if it hasn't been used, you have to pay the difference in the new price point to reactivate it, okay? Because I raise my prices once a year. Now, that's sometimes a $3 to $5 change. It's not crazy, but if I email a parent 90 days out and I say, you got one pitching lesson left that your son hasn't used, just want to give you the heads up, that it'll trigger the new pricing strategy on X date, and in order to reactivate it, you're gonna owe us an extra $5. They schedule almost immediately. They get right back in. Like hell, I'm gonna give you $5 more for that thing. And then we get them back into spending consistently. But the point is they don't wanna lose that initial investment where it is. So you can get people back in action by reactivating in this way. Mark likes to use the don't lose your spot messaging. Here's my take on this thing. I think everyone in the room knows, like, they can picture a fitness professional when I say the person who goes online and says, I've decided to open up one spot in my online coaching program. Shoot me a DM. There aren't a whole lot of people who have only one spot available there, and that really rubs me the wrong way. So if you're gonna do or say these things, I ask that you mean them. One of my favorite things about Mark that was really hard for me to process when I started working with him and Keeler was that hard deadlines are hard deadlines. So if he says, hey, the Unicorn Society, where we waive the initial fee, if you sign up by 9 p.m. on this day, if an email comes in at 9:01, hard stop, Mark will not honor it. Absolute non-starter. And that's not how I run my business. I never have. I'm always just making exceptions, letting people push me over in that sense. But I've changed my tune a little bit because all I had to see was it go wrong for someone once to realize it wasn't the end of the world. They spent the regular rate afterward because they had already mentally committed to coming and doing it. And Mark sent a clear message and he said, we live by a code. What's the point of rules if we're not going to follow them? Let's talk about the input bias. So this is about showing an effort behind the product you are selling. So people assume that more effort equals better output. This is why if you're one of the people in the room who's from Massachusetts, you know that there are a bunch of people are gonna go out to Treehouse Brewery, one of them, spend some stupid amount of time in line with thousands of people and spend some stupid amount of money for a beer that may or may not be considerably better, but the mindset is this is a craft product. They put a lot better ingredients in. They put more work into it. That's the input bias. We assume that they are selling something more valuable. There are ways that you can use this in your space. You could talk about how thorough your evaluation process is. It's okay to talk about how detailed you get during the assessment and screening process. I always say when people ask me, like, well, what does Eric excel at when he's speaking to a room? I say he's really good at figuring out where the audience is at and then talking like 3 to 5% above that. So people are nodding their head yes, and they're like, I think I know what he's saying. Well, we talk about that 3 to 5%. We'll tell you what we're gonna do with the power plates. We'll tell you what we're gonna do during specific screenings that might be a little bit complex, but people presume that this is a more valuable service because we're talking about something they're not necessarily that familiar with. Sometimes we'll talk about how involved the program design process is. That sells. If I say, hey, it takes a half hour to write this training material, Eric will say sometimes it takes an hour of work to prepare for an hour of training. We've certainly found some economies of scale to improve that, but the point is the program design process is very involved. You've all spent a lot of time. You're in a conference room on a Thursday in the middle of the summer in advance of sitting in seminar all weekend long to get better. Talk about that next week. Hey, sorry we cut our hours back last Thursday. I spent 72 hours learning everything I could about program design. I'm excited to bring this back to you guys next week. By the way, we're raising prices on October 1st. The next one, this one we joke a little bit internally at CSP, the person who's got their bio up and it's got 17 different acronyms at the back end. But you worked hard for that stuff. If you have a couple of meaningful ones, put it on there. I got my MBA. I think it says it on the bio that Pete Dupuis has his MBA and he's run a fitness business for 18 years. But don't be afraid to share that. That's a lot of effort, input into this process. You have something meaningful to sell, it adds value to it. The goal here is really just to reframe the service as a craft. It's not a commodity. You are selling something far better than the commoditized fitness version down the road. It's okay to talk about it. All right, the fresh start effect. This one blew my mind with some facts and statistics as I dug into it. And what we're doing is we're aligning with new beginnings. So there are what we would call temporal landmarks. New Year's Day, birthdays, People see themselves differently on New Year's Day, right? On January 1st, the search for the term diet increases by 80% every single year on Google, okay? There is a reason why I clear out the email account every Saturday morning between 8:30 and 9. We're open from 9 to 2. And I always wake up and I pour a cup of coffee. I don't go in on Saturdays, but I'll just clear the email to make sure there are no cancellations that my team isn't gonna see or something that's gonna throw everything upside down. And I come back to an email with 60 to 80 emails in it every single Monday morning. And it's because fitness starts on Mondays, or at least in my business it does. And that is a temporal landmark. The first of the week, the first of the month, the first of a quarter. I could send an email next month and say, hey, September 22nd is the autumnal equinox. That means summer ended yesterday. That means today we start preparing for next summer. Come on in. People move on that stuff. They're more open to invest in change if we are attached to something like that. And so let's talk about the statistics. People are 3 times more likely to sign up for a marathon the day after a birthday. You wanna hear an absolutely crazy, disappointing one? Men are 18% more likely to have an affair when their age ends in the number 9. That's disgusting and sad, but real. It's a temporal landmark. We are attached to certain things. These fresh start moments are huge in our promotions. One really big, effective one we run in our gym every single summer. Anyone who has ever trained with us, who is currently 12 years old, an email goes to their parents, hey, next year is gonna be rough on the baseball field. You make the jump from a Little League diamond to a 60-foot pitching mound and 90-foot base paths. It's rough. Most of these kids haven't made it through puberty at this point. The throw from third base to first base on that field, I saw a picture of the football field in Oakland where they put the Oakland A's on the football field, and first to third was from the 20 to the 20-yard line. It's a crazy throw, and you've got 13-year-olds who suddenly went from their tiny little league to me trying to throw it to the corner of the room over there to hit first base. That's hard. And so our Make the Jump to the Big Diamond promotion fills the room with rising 13-year-olds. And it's just a temporal landmark. It's a fresh start effect. We're starting a new stage in their life. So if you are working with athletes who are moving up to a bigger field, moving up to, maybe they're going from 7v7 soccer to 11v11 on a bigger field. Suddenly their field's 110 yards long and 70 feet wide. You can sell against that. The availability heuristic. So we can use what's top of mind to sell. On May 12th, Jason Tatum tore his Achilles. On May 13th, I got 3 emails from 3 dads asking what we were doing about Achilles injury prevention. This stuff really matters to people because we overestimate the likelihood of things happening to us that we've seen recently in the news and covered on TV. There was an 11-year-old who had Tommy John surgery 2 towns over from me recently. Tommy John is your UCL. Shouldn't be happening to 11-year-olds. And for a stretch, I'd say a 3-4 month span, I had all kinds of parents coming in and asking me how common that is. Should they be worried? What are we doing to prevent against it? And this stuff, you can proactively get ahead of these conversations as well. I mean, I guess if I really wanted to be a psychopath, I could sit down with a parent of a 12-year-old who came in, healthy kid, and I was like, geez, did you hear about that kid whose elbow blew out over in Ashland? Thank God we protect against that. Do you want to buy the unlimited package? That's not ethical. I'm not doing that, but it's an example of how you could use it. So what are we tapping into? Current events in your niche and sport, recent emotional stories. These things are all around us. If a politician falls and breaks their hip, you could talk about that during the sales process with a client who's approaching the elderly stage in life. These things are readily available constantly. Use current events, and it's going to keep your pitch relevant. It's going to keep it sticky. Let's talk about the power of imagine. There's a concept called temporal distancing. And we have athletes who come in, and maybe they're coming off of a tough injury. Kid had their ACL done, and it feels like the light at the end of the tunnel is so far off that they almost can't see it. And what we'll say is, hey, I want you to imagine a year from now, you're stepping on field for tryouts, and you're back to 100%. You've done the PT, you've done the strength training, we believe in you, you believe in yourself. Imagine that moment. And you can just let that sit for a second. Let them think about it. And then you can say, all right, now let's talk about what it's going to take to get there. Ourselves a year from now feels like a stranger, okay? So we can separate ourselves from today's objections and get into the future during the selling process by just asking people to imagine a scenario that's off into the distance, okay? Imagine the hard work was done. How good is that going to feel? Awesome. All right, we can get you there. Let's talk about it. You can use this with injury recovery, like I mentioned. Sometimes we could just use it with performance. Big goals. You want to make a team? Okay. Here's what it's going to look like to get yourself there. I'll give you an example of how I use this in social media. I decided I was going to go into my Twitter and just search the archives and see if I ever used this concept of temporal distancing, and I found this from 5, 6, 7 years ago. But it said, imagine it's 6 months from today and you're standing on a stage delivering a lecture on how you resolved an issue concerning you most on your current to-do list. What's that presentation look like? Okay, now execute. This is temporal distancing. Use it with your clients. When someone comes in, that could be a significant weight loss opportunity. That could be somebody whose hip's bugging them and they want to dance at their daughter's wedding in 9 months. You can say, I want you to imagine the reception. I want you to imagine you're doing the Cuban shuffle with your daughter. This stuff is going to make the selling process so much easier. Labeling theory. I used labeling theory earlier. When I gave you the example of selling your unlimited service on a cost per day basis, I started by saying, hey, you strike me as a person who wants to go all in on this. That's labeling. You're telling them that you see them as having a certain potential in them. People act in line with the labels that they believe about themselves, and you can give them labels. You can tell them, hey, I think you're this. So we use it. We assign positive aspirational labels. You're the kind of athlete who does this. You're a leader in your team's culture. I'd imagine you could affect change this way. I'll give you an example of labeling in my house. My son Colin is going into 6th grade this year. First year where you don't have the same teacher every single class. You move from classroom to classroom. You grow up a little bit in school. And he had to do some testing in school to figure out if he was going to be in the advanced mathematics class. And I didn't even know he'd done the testing. So it's a Friday, I get an email and it says, oh, good news, Colin's been recommended for advanced mathematics next year. Woohoo. And at the end of the day, I pick Colin up and he gets in the car. And in my mind, I'm like, Colin will not do his homework. He is not known to be a student. He just thinks he's an athlete and he won't work hard. And it's like pulling teeth getting him to do anything. Like homework is a battle every night of the week. I don't even want to talk about what summer reading has been like. And Colin gets in the car and he's like, hey, did you get an email today from the school? I said, I did, Colin. What are you expecting? He's like, did I get into advanced math? And I was like, you did. And he's like, yes. The next morning, I wake up at 6:30 in the morning and I find Colin doing a math workbook at our kitchen counter that we had bought the summer prior because we were going to have him stay sharp. He never opened it once. He was doing it for a half hour before the family woke up. And I was like, what's going on? He's like, well, if I'm going to do advanced math, I got to be ready to do it. He did that for like a month straight. Just because the school told him, you're good at math, kid. Keep it up. He won't do homework when I tell him to, but the school slapped a label on him, and suddenly he identified as a good math student. So honestly, this is an immensely powerful tool as you are selling. What we're doing is just creating a subtle push toward the behavior that supports these positive labels. The framing effect. Words change our decisions. So the way that we present information is really going to shift the way people decide on this stuff. We know this picture here, this is fruitcake, right? Looks disgusting. Gross, right? You don't want to buy it. A very famous bakery in Texas changed the title to Texas Pecan Pies and increased their sales of the product by 60%. Just because they changed the name. It's still gross as far as I'm concerned, but they got a lot more people to buy it. So how do we use this in the gym? Instead of saying, do you want to sign up? You say, which package works best for you? Okay, do you want to sign up is Hobson's choice. Yes or no? Which package works best for you is, do you want this or this? okay? A way that I use framing effect in our gym, I always say that one of the hardest sales for us is not to go from month 0 to month 1. That's pretty easy. It's getting people to re-up from month 1 to month 2 because we don't do contracts. I earn my clients' business every single month. That's partially because of how brutally niched we are with baseball. They're in and out, they're available, they're not, they're on campus, they're not. And so it's very hard to just put people on and off of EFT all the time, and annual contracts just don't work for me. At the end of month 1, what we do is we'll walk out onto the training floor, and instead of saying, hey, you're gonna stick around next month, we'll be like, hey, you're killing it. I've got some ideas for your next program. Like, I've got some pretty cool ideas. It's gonna be fun, you're gonna be fired up. And we just walk away. That's it. We create FOMO. We frame it as if, hey, you're gonna be here. It's not a decision, hey, do you wanna come back? It's, we all know you're coming back. I can't wait to design that program. There was an interesting study I came across. They sat a bunch of people down and they said, hey, I want you to watch this video. You're gonna see this vehicle and it's going to contact a barrier, and I would like you to tell me how fast you think it was going. The other group was told it's gonna smash the barrier, and I want you to tell me how fast you think it was going. The smashed group said it was going 42 miles an hour. The contact group said it was going 31. Smash versus contact. They found that when they started podcasts, Apple Music was trying to figure out why certain people were just suddenly disappearing. And they found that 47 of the people who started to listen to podcasts but no longer did very suddenly, did so because they thought that subscribing to a podcast meant they were spending money, so they just stepped away. They changed that to following podcasts. And now we all follow the music and the shows and the things that we like because one word scared a bunch of people off. Let's get into this third and final section. We're gonna talk about retaining our business and getting them to spend more. So we're gonna keep clients longer, we're gonna get them to put more money into the bank account. The IKEA effect, I'd imagine many of us in the room have felt this. Being part of the process, we value what we helped create. You take that stupid thing out of the box with that one little Allen wrench, you futz around with it forever and you make it, and at the end you're proud of it. Like, I built that. And it's still not a particularly valuable thing, but you've emotionally invested in it. That's the IKEA effect. There's a way that we use this at CSP. So yesterday my office manager called out sick, which is great the day before Perform Better lecture, because guess who gets to run the front desk for the whole day? And when I sat at the front desk yesterday, we have a binder on the front desk where clients come up and they put their name down. I'm due for a new program on X day. We ask that they give us a week's notice. They put their name in, they say what day they're gonna be back. Every single person who came to the front desk yesterday, as they were filling that out, I said, hey, what was your favorite part about this most recent program? They'll tell me something. Oh, I thought farmers carries were awesome. Okay, what did you hate the most? I don't wanna do any more split squats. Okay, all right, cool. I'm gonna make sure I make note of that so when they design it, you'll be good. And I put that in what we call the program board. And I said, don't put this in, put a variation or progression of farmers carries. Spoke with them at the front desk because we have notes, and they write that program and they'll walk out and they'll hand it to them at the next one and they'll be like, hey, we went heavy on the farmers carries this month, you're gonna love it. The buy-in goes up when they feel like they've had some influence on what we're doing. So every chance we get, we try and make the clients feel like they've influenced the direction of the next program, even if it's in a single exercise. But if we can point at it and say that, you did that, we heard you, makes a big difference. Next is the endowment effect. So we tend to over-prioritize the value of that which has been given to us. So that's why, say, free trials are really valuable. You give someone a taste of the service, let them feel comfortable in the space, let them feel like it's theirs. It's hard for them to give up. The rhyme is reason effect. I'd imagine there are a lot of people in the room who see that image, and there is a rhyme that comes to mind. Anybody by show of hands?
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
If the glove does not fit, you must acquit. Okay. Isotoner, yeah, you were all in, right? I watched that in the library at my high school, my senior year, I remember. when they settled that. I'm sure a lot of people remember where they were when they heard the outcome of the OJ trial. This is called cognitive fluency. Our brain just likes easy stuff. The easier it is to process, the more valid it feels to us. So if you can build rhymes in, as crazy as it sounds, you should do it. The best-selling t-shirt we've ever sold at CSP, which we have made like 10 more iterations of since, was a quote from Kurt Schilling, who was in to do a Q&A with our clients, our college athletes, where he said, how many of you like lower day? And nobody. They're all, we like upper day. And he's like, come on guys, you gotta train ass to throw gas. So we put that on a t-shirt. We've sold like 700 of those t-shirts in the last 10 years. And that's all it is, it's rhyme is reason. Make it stick with rhymes. It's easier to process, people will buy in quickly. You should use it on your slogans. You can put it on your wall. As hokey as it sounds, it's memorable. These catchy kind of concepts are all around you. Reactants. Okay, so this is often called the pushback effect. And if you take something away from people, they want it more. If you graduated in the fall of 99, or in the spring of 99 like I did, you know that that's Napoleon Dynamite in that image. That shows my age, but yeah, somebody likes it. And this works with urgency, so limited time spots, people are gonna react. Like I said, Mark is world class at this. We're gonna give away 5 seats at our Denver retreat at the end of September. Once they're gone, they're gone. Exclusivity, we do a lot of the invite-only type stuff. And then purchase caps is an interesting one. So I came across a study where they were selling cans of soup at a grocery store. And they discounted them to a certain figure. And they sold, on average, 3.3 cans of soup. Then when they went out there and they slapped a sign on and they said, sorry, you can't buy more than 12 of these. People bought more than 7 cans every time. So when I read that in December. And I went into John's office and I was like, hey, read this. And I was like, how can we use this today? And he's like, well, we got a problem with Blaze's pitching calendar here. Blaze is our pitching coordinator, does 30-minute lessons. And he's like, I don't think we have the capacity to meet the demand for the college guys who are all coming in. I think we're gonna have overflow and we're gonna need to spill into our second pitching coordinator. And he's like, let's just play off of that. So we put a sign out front and we said, you can't book more than 6 pitching lessons between now and the end of January with Blaze. Sorry, we need room for everybody. And people just started lining up to book 6 lessons, every one of them. I want one this day, this day, this day, this day, before January 31st. And people they were provoked to move because of the pushback effect. I took something away from them potentially. They were like, nope, I need it. Give me the 6. Let's get into the calendar right now. And it's amazing how perceived scarcity can change behaviors. The planning fallacy. So basically, our clients tend to think they can do big things before they realize the work that goes into it or the commitment they need to make. We overestimate what we can do, and then sometimes that has a trickle-down effect on our revenues, right? So for us, when 85% of your clients go in season basically at the same time, it means my business goes off a cliff on the 3rd Monday in March when all the high school kids go in season. And we ran the numbers between 2007 and 2017, and we found out that the average high school client with us trained 0.8 times per week while they were in season over a decade span. And so, but all of them we found would start their off season and they'd be like, I'm gonna be all over this place. I'm gonna find time to get in here. I worked too hard this off season not to keep this up. I'm gonna be here. But it's hard. And so we said, hey, what if we fixed a single figure for you? Spend X amount of dollars. In our case, it's the cost of 1 month of unlimited training. We say to our athletes, I think we had 85 high school varsity baseball players who trained with us last off season. We said, hey, for $449, single payment, you train as often as you can get in here until the day your season ends. You win a state title, great. You use this way on into the spring. And well, for starters, we got 42 kids to sign up the first time we did it in 2017. And at the end of that off season, the average training frequency went from 0.8 to 1.8 sessions per week. They all got great value. Great value, like far better than they would have got paying our once a week rate. I kept my clients warm, so I wasn't trying to reactivate 40 plus athletes at the end of a season when it felt like we kind of fell off of the top of their radar. And what we did is we just got them to increase commitment, and in the end they increased spend, and that's been probably the best move we've made as far as dealing with the planning fallacy. So if you've got clients who talk a big game, yeah, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna be here 4 days a week, make them spend against it. Don't make them spend on basically how they behaved. Get them to spend in advance on the commitment, and then they will buy in more. I will tell you that during this in-season period, I email every Thursday the kids and I BCC their dads. And I'm like, hey, friendly reminder, your dad gave me $449 last month to make sure that you kept up with this. We'd love to see you on this day. We're open this day and this day and this day this weekend. We're expanding our hours for our high school athletes. Let us know. And they learn real fast that we BCC'd their dads, because when those emails go out, suddenly we have bookings real fast. The halo effect. This is an interesting one. So one win can influence your whole picture. A good first impression is going to have a trickle-down effect on a lot of things. So right here, for example, if you said, oh yeah, I'm training at this new gym, Cressy Sports Performance, like actually they're the only gym on the planet that New Balance is partnered with, and they've made them a signature shoe. Interestingly enough, 2 of the 4 shoes we've ever made are in this room. I've seen them on people that I don't know today, which is pretty cool. But if I told you that, you'd assume the place is fairly legit, right? They're at least fairly competent. That's the halo effect. Might be to say, my business partner Eric is the director of player performance for the Yankees. So we're going to assume that the director of performance at his Massachusetts facility is pretty sharp because he picked him. And then we're going to assume that the guy who owns the PT clinic inside that space is going to be pretty sharp by extension because it's part of a bigger community. And we're going to assume that the PT intern that's with them this summer is pretty sharp. This is all the halo effect. It's a trickle down, right? And one of the coolest examples I saw of this was just, they said, the example they used in the book was, this is especially valuable in fitness facilities. They said, if you put the aroma of cleanliness immediately when you walk inside the door, you kind of get a pass on how shitty nasty the rest of the gym smells the rest of the time. They walk in, they smell awesome scent, like right through the door. The halo effect makes them think the rest of the gym is clean. Do it, like clean the hell. Use that like Fabuloso or Simple Green stuff right inside your door every single day. First thing people get hit with, they're gonna be like, oh, I'm back at the clean gym. This is similar to social proof. And the social proof, like a lot of these concepts, these fallacies, these heuristics, they're really running in lockstep parallel to each other. They really complement each other. But social proof has a halo effect to it. The jerseys on the wall do insinuate that the people around you are competent coaches. Let's talk about some easy wins. These are facts and statistics that kind of caught me by surprise as I was going through this. There was a quote that said, a fact wrapped in a story is 22 times more memorable. Build some facts in. It's pretty easy to put statistics in these things. And the quote is in my presentation notes, or who said it. I can't remember the name of the gentleman. The graphs one was interesting. Instant credibility, we'll call it the science halo effect. They had a study where they showed that people believed medical information. 60% of them thought it was credible when it was just text. When you added a graph, it went to 97%. Just putting a visual of a graph. All of a sudden, it's legit. Time and urgency emojis and subject lines. Like, so if you use the countdown, the ticking, the sand, or something along those lines, you can increase your open rates by 20 to 24% using things like that. You can get a double-digit boost by using now, tomorrow, today, limited time. Simple words dramatically change behaviors. So let's look at this whole kind of thing as a recap. First, I want you to price like a psychologist. So you're going to use anchoring, you're going to use the framing concepts, and then the defaults to make the most logical decision in your mind feel like the most natural decision for people to pursue. Next, we're going to speak the brain's language. We're going to do that by using the biases, loss aversion, labeling, fresh starts to persuade. And then last, we're going to build loyalty, right? So we're going to design that in with creating commitment. We're going to boost perception of value as best we can, and then we're going to get people to spend more with us over time. I want to give you some some of the resources in addition to what I mentioned. The book Influence, the 2021 edition, as I mentioned. Nudge by Thaler and Sunstein is a really good read. The Choice Factory was written by a British behavioral scientist, which is very good, that I read in the last couple of months. And then Using Behavioral Science in Marketing was the one that, you ever go to buy a book on, well, for me it was on Kindle. I had my eye on this book because I kept seeing it recommended to me. And for some reason it was $36. And I was like, I got a book for $4.99 on Kindle recently. I'm not spending $36. And I did that for like probably 3 months, kicking the can down the road. And then I just bought the damn book and it was awesome. But it reads kind of like an academic manual. It's like a school textbook, but it's a really, really good one if you're into this stuff. The Nudge podcast and Freakonomics Radio are my two favorite podcasts on the topic. I listened to the Nudge podcast from this Monday's issue on my way down here. They talked about the epic failure of the rollout of New Coke. Interesting story if anyone's interested. And then there's some miscellaneous ones. If you're a Reddit person, the Behavioral Science Network on Reddit's very fascinating, and Dan Ariely's blog is great. Free stuff. I gave it to you before. If you want our one-on-one meeting template, go grab it. If you want Mark's goal setting template, or if you want the 3-pager PDF that breaks down all of these concepts that I gave you, 40 or so behavioral science concepts, you can go grab it there. And then lastly, I just want you to take one action item. Just pick one of the concepts and apply it on Monday. I got you. Go back one. Gotcha. Oh, did I? There you go. Sorry. Friendly reminder, we're going to buy anyone who shows up drinks between 6:30 and 8. If you haven't met Mark, he is a big, beautiful, fascinating personality, and it'll be worth it just for that entertainment value. Would love to talk shop with anyone about gym ownership and all of those other things. We're going to be at the Union Station Brewery. But again, I want to go back and say, just pick one. Do me a favor and pick one thing that you're going to tweak. If you are one of the people in this room who have not raised your prices for more than 18 months, I'm going to pick for you. On Monday, I want you to raise your prices. That's it for me. We're good to go. Vince is next.